Greetings from Drill and Defense. I'm glad you're here. What began as a space for clear, discipline analysis eventually became a magazine, and now this podcast is the next extension of that same work. Different formats, same structure, same intention. To look at defense, energy, history, and the forces shaping them. Sometimes side by side, sometimes one at a time, but always with clarity. If you're listening, you'll notice that this isn't a single topic podcast. Some episodes will stay close to how militaries operate and how decisions are made on the ground. Others will focus on energy, infrastructure, and the systems that keep modern states running. At times, we will step back into history because many of today's choices only make sense when you understand where they came from. Each subject stands on its own, but together they build a more accurate picture of how the world actually works. Today's episode focuses on the relationship between defense and energy. That connection often decides outcomes long before anyone realizes it. Still, this podcast does not lock itself into one theme. It moves where the subject leads. Sometimes that means a battlefield, sometimes a port, a company, a resource, or a decision taken decades earlier that continues to shape events today. And that brings us directly to today's core idea. Defense depends on energy. Completely. Tanks don't move because they are just, armored. They move because fuel keeps arriving. Aircraft stay in the air not because of technology alone, but because supply lines stay intact. Navies cross oceans, only when logistics allow them to do so. Power means very little if energy cannot reach the point where it's needed. Ukraine offers a clear example. When power grids and fuel depots were targeted, the effects were immediate. Movement slowed, drone operations had to be relocated, units relied on generators just to maintain basic functions. The tempo of the battlefield shifted. Energy determined it, as it always does. And the same logic applies at sea. The Fifth Fleet is not based in Bahrain for appearances. It is there because a large portion of global oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. If that passage is interrupted, even briefly, the consequences spread fast. Tankers stop, prices react, insurance markets tighten. Energy continues to move because protection is already in place. You see the same pattern in the Baltic region. When the Nord Stream pipelines were sabotaged, the response was immediate. Increased patrols, expanded surveillance, heightened alert levels. Energy infrastructure forced security actors to react without delay. Now let's move south to West Africa, to the Niger Delta. Oil platforms there have been targeted repeatedly. In response, companies turned to private security, negotiated locally, and coordinated with state forces. All for one reason: to keep production running. Every interruption affects global markets. Energy does not simply prefer security, it just depends on it. Cross-border energy projects follow the same rule. The Southern Gas Corridor was not built through engineering alone. It required stability in Turkey, balance in the Caucasus, and a supportive security posture in the region. On a map, the pipeline looks straightforward. On the ground, it exists only because control is maintained along its route. Defense exports make this connection even clearer. When the Gulf states acquire patrol vessels or air defense systems, it is not only about modernization. These systems protect shipping lanes and offshore platforms. They protect the infrastructure that keeps energy moving. The defense deal quietly becomes a stability mechanism whether it is stated openly or not. But energy partnerships work in reverse. Build an LNG terminal, expand a refinery, develop an offshore field. Just soon after you see training programs, maritime coordination, and security planning emerge. No state invests billions into energy infrastructure without surrounding it with protection, even if security is not mentioned in official announcements. Then there are the minerals: lithium, cobalt, nickel, rare earths. These materials sit at the center of modern defense technology: drones, sensors, communications, guidance systems. Yet, many of these resources come from the regions where stability is fragile. That is why new security relationships are forming in places like Mozambique, Zambia, and the Congo. These materials are valuable and they do not move safely on their own. When you put all of this together, the pattern becomes clear. Defense runs on energy. Energy survives through security. Security creates leverage. Leverage shapes partnerships. And over time, those partnerships reshape both sectors. That is exactly why Guerrilla Defense exists. The website, the magazine, and now this podcast are built on the same foundation. You cannot understand defense without understanding energy, and you cannot understand energy without knowing who protects it. A drone strike on a refinery is not just an attack. An evil escort is not just a patrol. A defense agreement is not just procurement. And a pipeline shutdown is never just a market reaction. They are all part of the same chain. Once you see that chain, the world becomes easier to read. So, that's all for today. Next time, we'll go deeper into how this chain shapes decisions, alliances, and outcomes long before they appear in headlines.